Good morning, everyone. Qualifying for the 12th race in the 2018 Euroformula Open is just getting underway at Monza, and as you can see, track conditions a little bit cooler than they were for yesterday's qualifying session, which is to be expected, given that we're getting things going a little bit earlier on in the day here at the Autodrome just north of Milan. I'm Keith Collentine to talk you through today's action. Do get in touch with us on Facebook, on Twitter. We are at EF_Open for all the developments on what could well turn out to be a championship deciding day. Glorious golden sunlight bathing the Monza circuit as the drivers head out for their first run in the cars since yesterday's race. There's Ben Pascal coming quite slowly out of the Rettifilo chicane, which would be an uncomfortably familiar feeling for him because that was where his race ended yesterday. Hopefully no repeat of the problems he had there. It looks like he's just taking his time to get up to speed. But Ben Pascal, the only driver left in the field who can keep Felipe Drugovich from clinching the title at some point during the remaining 5 races in 2018, the next of which will be coming up later on today at Monza. This, of course, the qualifying session to decide what order the 14 cars will start in. We have someone heading through the runoff area at the Della Roja there. I wonder if that was Ben Pascal, because he was running with this clutch of cars. We'll keep an eye out for him. Now, if you're joining us for the first time for a Euroformula Open qualifying session, you may not know that in the beginning of the session, drivers generally sort of play themselves in on an older set of tyres. It's a little bit of a phony war, really, at this stage in the session. Just getting a bit of a feel for the track, seeing what it's like in significantly cooler temperatures. The track temperature about 23 degrees. That's around 12 degrees down on what we saw during the race yesterday, and that really does make a significant difference to how the cars handle. You see Matteo Siorio there getting a bit of a feel for his car at the exit of the Ascari chicane. Dev Gore getting once again the opportunity to be one of the first to head around and set a time, as he was yesterday. He always seems to be quite eager to get out onto the track and maximize the amount of laps he's able to do. So as I say, the serious business in this session not really going to get going until the final few laps. Back in the pits, the Campos team are pulling Alex Karkosik back into position. He's come back into the pits, having had a quick installation lap. So the driver's going to get a feel for their cars, get a feel for how they work in the slipstream, because that is always very, very important to how well they qualify at Monza. If you can get tucked up in a slipstream of another car down some of the long straights, it can add a few clicks to your top speed. And even if you then lose a little bit of time running behind the cars in the disturbed air in what few corners there are at Monza, the net effect can be very beneficial to your lap time indeed. Now, of course, all the drivers understand this and all the teams understand this, so we do get a lot of positioning of the drivers trying to get themselves in shape to set the best possible lap time. Now, it all got a little bit silly at the end of yesterday's qualifying session, where we basically had an enormous queue of cars driving very, very slowly towards the end of the lap, just before the checkered flag was about to come out in order to determine who would be the last one across the line, positioned behind as many other cars as possible, potentially to benefit and get the best possible lap time. Of course, in the end, quite a few of the drivers ending up holding each other up. We had a bit of fist waving and arm shaking. It was all resolved in the end. However, as a result of that, there is a big, slightly friendly warning on the timing screen to the drivers today, which says all teams are reminded not to drive slowly abnormally during qualifying. Well, as you can see, we have got a few of the cars driving slowly towards the end of this lap. So as usual, give drivers an inch and they'll take a mile, or the metric equivalents. And they will still want to position themselves to get the best possible run at the end of the lap. And I have to say, if this is not abnormally slow driving, I'm not entirely sure what may be considered that, but nonetheless, Aldo Festanti slowly building up to speed as he comes around the Parabolica. A couple of his rivals already pressing on with greater urgency, wanting to get their laps underway. Well, Dev Gore has already set the ball rolling with a 1:52.029, but that is some way off the benchmark times that we expect to see towards the end of this session. For reference, pole position yesterday went to Bent Viscal with a lap of 146.153, but even that looked slightly compromised because of all the traffic we saw at the end of the session. And I fancy there are quite a few tenths more in that lap time for some driver to find if they can get it. Indeed, Felipe Drugovich, our runaway championship leader, indicated a considerably quicker time could be available. He did set a 1:45.9, but that was disallowed due to a track limits violation. So we'll see what happens this time around. And once again, we've got a driver heading onto the runoff area at the Della Roja. This time it is Cameron Dass, the Carlin driver, currently 6th in the classification, but as we say, most of the drivers not done any serious lap times yet. Marcus Siebert, though, is on a quick one. However, he has just been held up quite badly, I think, there by the Carlin driver in front of him, and sure enough, Siebert backing out of that one. And we take a look back early on the lap at a really big lockup for, I think that's Bent Viscal. Yes, it is, and in fact, he doesn't make it to the apex of turn 2 and has to clatter across those strong disincentives that are the big sausage curbs in the runoff area. Now, who is looking good for a quick lap time? Dev Gore has improved, but only to a 1 minute 50.139. Kalen Frederick goes top with the fastest time of all in the 2nd and 3rd sectors for a 1:49.034. But Guillaume Samaya is now quicker than him in the middle part of the lap. And we've got, once again, quite a bit of traffic towards the end of the lap. So despite the teams being discouraged from driving slowly, it looks as though the tactics are pretty much the same as they were yesterday. And coming out of the final corner and driving towards the line goes Marcus Siebert. He had the fastest time through the 1st sector, but as we saw, was badly held up in the middle of the lap, so he only goes 4th quickest on a 1:52.277. Who behind him is able to improve? Leonardo Lorandi goes up into 4th. Guillaume Samaya does go quickest after setting that fastest middle sector time, as Marcus Siebert then spoils the beginning of his subsequent lap, so it's not going off to a particularly good start for the Argentinian driver. Siebert was definitely a candidate for pole position yesterday. In fact, he was provisionally on pole until the final laps got underway, and then Bent Viscal just nicked it off him at the last, and there it is. Classic turn 1 at Monza. Front right inside wheel lockup there for Siebert. So that spoiled his next run. So Guillaume Samaya leading the way at the moment, 1:48.976. But we are still almost 3 seconds away from truly competitive lap times here. The drivers obviously running on older tyres and just getting side to laps in at this stage. We'll see the serious business later on. There are the RP drivers, and swinging in to the Parabolica goes Leonardo Lorandi. His first race weekend in Euroformula Open, and he acquitted himself really quite credibly indeed yesterday with a strong run to 4th place. Nice performance indeed from him. He goes quickest of all with the fastest time so far in the 2nd and 3rd sectors for a 1:47.659. Lorandi enjoying a debut in the Euroformula Open at his home track. 18-year-old from Brescia, the younger brother of Alessio Lorandi, who's also been working his way through the junior categories. Here comes Felipe Drugovich, our championship leader. He swings into the Parabolica, and you can really see how the drivers are not pushing to the limit at the moment. He's quite away from the edge of the track as he sweeps into the corner, but nonetheless, he is on a reasonably quick lap time. He's fastest of all, in fact, in the middle sector and the final sector. So Drugovich lowers the top time, and really not having to extend himself very much in order to do so. A 1:46.691 for the RP Motorsport driver, who is looking for his 8th pole position of the 2018 season. Drugovich, in fact, has been beaten to pole in the last 2 races by Bent Viscal, and there goes Viscal not far in front of him, actually, at the moment. Viscal's had a decent run in qualifying of late. Cameron Dass not so much, locking up and going straight on at the Della Roja, but Viscal on pole for 3 of the last 4 races. Now he's really, actually no, that is his teammate Aldo Festanti, who's holding up Felipe Drugovich at the moment. But no great concern for Drugovich at this stage, because as we say, the serious business in qualifying is coming up a bit later on. It's worth mentioning Felipe Drugovich able to seal the title in this afternoon's race. We do give a point for pole position, but that's not going to be decisive as far as the championship is concerned, regardless of whether it goes to Drugovich or Viscal. Viscal, the only driver who can beat him to the title. you've still got quite a few drivers jockeying for position. It's the classic Monza problem, really. Although there are only 14 cars and there's well over 5 kilometers of track for them, they all want a slipstream, but none of them want to be held up in the tow, and that's why we keep seeing this similar picture of drivers going quite slowly towards the end of the lap, wanting to position themselves behind a rival in order to get a slipstream. Ducking out from behind Cameron Dass there went one of the Campos cars. Callum Williams there in the Sol Fortec car is improving his time. Felipe Drugovich went round with the fastest first sector time, but was then held up in sector 2. We've got quite a few drivers all line astern as they head back down towards the first corner one more time. Guillaume Samaya still in second place after being displaced by Felipe Drugovich, but Alex Karkosik is now up to third overall. In fact, with a 1:47.553, which matches to within 1,000th of a second the time set by Guillaume Samaya, so it couldn't possibly be any closer in the fight for second position at the moment. And once again, we've got drivers getting in each other's way as we come down to the Della Roja, and it seems like every time they come around, at least one driver heads through the runoff there. This time it is Marcus Siebert. Leonardo Lorandi, though, is improving. Personal best in the first sector and fastest of all now in sector 2. And there is Lorandi in the RP Motorsport car. He's down the Parabolica, away from the clutch of most of the drivers who are at the moment heading up towards and through the Lesmos. Lorandi just getting on with his own thing and working on his lap times at the moment. He moves up to second place, just under a quarter of a second slower than Felipe Drugovich. Lorandi, you have to say, had decent pace in yesterday's race. He started mid-pack, he got shuffled back a little bit on the first lap, but once he got some clear air, he was lapping quite quickly in the middle part of the race. His lap times did drop off a little bit over the final laps, and because of that, he wasn't quite able to catch up with the leading trio of cars and get in contention for a podium, but nonetheless, fourth overall and second in the rookies was a very good result indeed. But Felipe Drugovich is still finding the traffic problematic. He comes out of the Parabolica side by side with Aldo Festanti. Alex Karkosik, meanwhile, has gone fastest of all in the first sector. Personal best in the middle sector, that lifts him to second place, a 10th off Felipe Drugovich, and Cameron Dass gets within 2/10 of the pace setter as well to go third, and that pushes Leonardo Lorandi down into fourth position. We've got one of the RP Motorsport cars straight line in the chicane. Drugovich has worked his way through that gaggle of traffic and has now is basically playing the role of the lead bike in the peloton, to borrow a Tour de France analogy, in that he is the one parting the air for the cars behind him, and here he is as he comes up towards the Della Roja. And ducking out behind Alex Karkosik goes to the inside of Matthias Iorio. And really, in these qualifying sessions, we're getting almost as much wheel-to-wheel action as we did in the races, particularly in the opening phase of yesterday, the first half of yesterday's race, with Felipe Drugovich, Ben Viscal, and Marcus Siebert battling each other for position. We had some really gripping action to begin with, but then once Drugovich hit the front, he was able to just pull away as he pleased. Aldo Festanti, currently 13th fastest, is given a warning for track limits, and another driver, Lucas Dunner, has had his best time disallowed for a track limits violation. Dunner 8th at the moment, but that 1:47.588 is about to be struck from our timing screens. So he's going to have to keep an eye on that when he comes round. And as always, as we say, Monza, it may be the temple of speed, as people often refer to it, but also the track limits are a bit generous in places, particularly at the Parabolica, to the displeasure of some with this new asphalt border that they installed a few years ago. It does allow drivers an awful lot of room to get away with abusing the track limits on their faster laps. But meanwhile, who is improving their times? Felipe Drugovich improves on his time indeed with a 1:46.649. That's about half a second off yesterday's pole position time. He continues to lead the way. Alex Karkosik running strongly indeed at the moment in second place, ahead of Cameron Dass. That is Callum Williams, one of two drivers to make it around the corner, quite a few of them cutting across the runoff at the Rettifilio. But Callum Williams, 9th place at the moment for the only Fortec car in the field. There comes Marcos Siebert back up towards the Della Roja. And really, apart from that first corner on the lap, that's the only truly slow corner we have at Monza. The Della Roja is a slower chicane, but reasonably quick. And then they have these two fast right-handers through the Lesmos. Not as quick as they were when the track was first built. It's been reprofiled on a few occasions to create a bit of extra runoff space. Although at the Lesmos, you've just got a massive amount of gravel if you run wide. That was Bent Pascal back in the pits. And then they pile on the speed again, build up to enormous top speeds as they head into Ascari. This wonderful flowing chicane. It used to be a very fast left-hander. That is going back many, many decades. It was then reprofiled into this quick left-right, left flick, named in honor of Alberto Ascari, the great Italian champion, the first ever multiple champion of Formula One, who sadly lost his life testing a Ferrari sports car in that corner back in 1955. The Parabolica has pretty much always been the Parabolica, and despite the extra runoff there, is still much as it was back in the days when Ascari and Fangio and the like raced around it. Of course, for a while they did use a tighter configuration of the bend a little bit further down called Verdano, but Parabolica is what we remember as the classic turn at the end of the Monza lap. Meanwhile, Leonardo Lorandi, breaking me from my reverie of reminiscing about past Italian Grand Prix circuit configurations, goes quickest of all, just 29 thousandths of a second faster than Felipe Drugovich. Now, of course, Lorandi and Drugovich, both teammates. And there is Lorandi in the RP Motorsport number 3 car, running just ahead of the sister car of Kalen Frederick, who, like Lorandi, is a newcomer to the championship this weekend, the 16-year-old American driver making his debut, and Lorandi getting the blue flag to let his teammate by. And, of course, the RP Motorsport rookie duo will have had the opportunity to take a look at what Felipe Drugovich was doing yesterday, have a look at his setup, see his telemetry and how he was driving the various corners. There's no better person to learn from in the championship at the moment than the man who has won 9 out of the 11 races so far. And Lorandi and Frederick now have the opportunity to build on that, and Frederick is doing it as well because he's improved his lap time, personal bests in all 3 sectors for a lap of 1:47.172, just over half a second slower than Lorandi, who leads the times at the moment. As we pass the halfway point in this session, the drivers are heading back in for a bit of attention to their cars. Lorandi's RP Motorsport machine up on the jacks, a fresh set of Michelin tyres being applied to all 4 corners, ready for what's going to be the decisive sprint to the checkered flag, which will decide who's going to be on pole position. At the moment, provisionally, it is that man, Leonardo Lorandi, who we just saw. And heading back in now is Dev Gore in the Carlin. So let's run you down on the lap times as they stand with just over 11 minutes left in this session. Leonardo Lorandi for RP Motorsport is fastest on a 1:46.620. That is just under half a second slower than yesterday's pole position time. So we think there's still a fair bit of room for improvement there in the final laps, providing the drivers don't all get in each other's way. Felipe Drugovich is second quickest, just 29 thousandths of a second slower than his rookie teammate in the RP Motorsport car. Alex Karkosik having a good run so far, 1:46.802 for him. Fourth place, Cameron Dass for Carlin on a 1:46.882, fractionally slower. Marcus Siebert fifth at the moment, 1:46.974. He started on the front row yesterday, but had a bit of a compromised first few runs. We saw him getting held up by a few people just then. The Campos driver, Kalen Frederick for RP Motorsport, his second qualifying session in the Euroformula Open, he sits 6th at the moment. We're looking at Bent Pascal, who is 7th for Teo Martin. Took pole position with his last lap of the session yesterday, so don't rule him out, but he definitely needs to improve from that 7th on the grid to get on terms with Felipe Drugovich, as we take a slow motion replay of Leonardo Lorandi showing us what he can do through the first chicane at Monza. And heading out of the pits there, that is Guillaume Samaya in another of the RP Motorsport cars. He's currently 9th behind Mateus Iorio. Iorio on 1:47.3, Samaya on 1:47.4, and on 1:47.5 we find Callum Williams in 10th place for Fortec, a 1:47.6 for Dev Gore in 11th for Carlin. Christian Hahn is on a 1:48.063 and currently 12th. His father, Marcello, is going to be out in qualifying for the International GT Open in a few minutes' time. Also driving for DriveX in a Mercedes SLS AMG. Lucas Dunner is 13th quickest on a 1:48.128, and slowest at the moment is Aldo Festanti on a 1:49.421. He's also had a warning for track limits as well, so there's a lot riding on his final run at the end of this session. And the same also goes for this man, Felipe Drugovich, running on his own at the circuit at the moment, and I wonder if he might be thinking he could do without the trouble of trying to get a slipstream from a rival car, and he just wants to go out there and do his own thing and not have to be concerned about where the other cars are. Two of his other RP teammates come out. Now this is, again, Leonardo Lorandi and Calum Frederick. Lorandi ahead in car number 3 with the green mirrors. Calum Frederick getting a little bit leery around the first part of the Rettifilio there. In car number 1, yellow flash in the middle of the helmet and black wing mirrors. And yes, I am saying this for my benefit just as much as those of you watching at home, because it's always important to be able to distinguish between the cars with very similar liveries. Easy to spot the RP Motorsport cars with those distinctive bright red flashes on the nose. But not always easy to tell between the 4 different cars they have on the track. Of course, Felipe Drugovich, in more than one ways, is demonstrating what a young, up-and-coming racing driver should do. Not only is he winning everything, but he's got his name written in massive letters on the side pod, which helps simple-minded commentators like me. Definitely a point to keep on board if you're thinking of a career in junior motorsport. Of course, another driver, always easy to spot. There goes Lucas Dunner, heading through the Curva Grande, and we're seeing quite a few of the cars running solitary as this final stint begins. I wonder if the teams have been given another reminder not to have too many end-of-lap shenanigans at the end of this session. We will find out. But we did see Calum Frederick and Leonardo Lorandi going out pretty much together, and you have to say it would make an awful lot of sense for the pair of them to kind of work as a team and drag each other around the circuit on alternate laps, but trying to get racing drivers to agree to something like that is never particularly easy. Anyway, here comes Ben Pascal. He's out of the pits on this lap as well. And with just over 7 minutes left on the session, we are about to see the final laps, but certainly it was the case yesterday that everyone was thinking that their best lap was going to come on the very, very last lap of the session, when they had the time to get the tyres to the correct temperature, and above all, have the track at the optimum temperature and gain the maximum benefit from running closely behind another of their rivals. So there is Guillaume Samaya, 9th at the moment, and 4th out of the 4 RP Motorsport cars. Callum Williams had a bit of an unfortunate race yesterday. Seemed to be getting attacked left, right and centre from his rivals during the event. Currently 10th fastest for the 18-year-old from Perth, the reigning Australian Formula 3 champion as well. So he certainly knows the hardware. Not had a tremendous amount in the way of results so far this year. His best has been a 6th placed finish. That was earlier on in the season at the Hungaroring. And here he is heading towards us now. And generally qualified, it's not really been his strong point so far qualifying this year. He's had a couple of 5th places, has Callan. Qualifying though, of course, at Monza, as was said by Ben Pascal yesterday after he took pole position, it's not utterly critical in terms of where you end up in the race necessarily, because the important thing is you've got a car that works well in the race. You can slipstream your way to the front, and that was certainly the case for Felipe Drugovich, despite starting from 3rd position. Was able to work his way past Marcus Siebert and Ben Pascal, and once he hit the front, whatever he'd done with the setup of his car, he was able to just draw away from the field, and Pascal and Siebert weren't able to slipstream back up and respond to him in the way that he'd been able to do to them throughout the race up until that point. Drugovich just stretched his legs at the front of the field and built up a lead of multiple seconds over his pursuers. Of course, he was aided in that when Pascal's race came to a premature end. Not got any drivers improving to any great extent at the moment, although Cameron Dass has just set his personal best final sector. He remains in 4th position for the time being. And Leonardo Lorandi, having gone out in the RP Motorsport car, has returned to the pits for what looks like attention to his front right wheel. Well, that is a disappointing setback for him. May not be able to get back out in time for the final run. So that is our provisional pole sitter, potentially not able to set a time at the end of the session. And that would be a significant setback for him. And Caleb Frederick, his teammate, we saw both of them head out around the same time, has also returned to the pits. Frederick, 6th fastest so far. So we'll see why that is. We've got another car heading into the pits with 4 minutes left in the session, so we're going to be running out of cars to set flying times at this rate. But Cameron Dass, meanwhile, has gone quickest of all in the middle sector. And he will be driving to the line momentarily. Here's a big clutch of cars, and they have got very much into classic Monza formation, ready for their final flying attempts. Callum Williams moves up to 6th with a 1:47.025 personal bests in the last 2 sectors for him. And he gets within 4/10 of our pace. Till Lorandi has returned to the track with less than 4 minutes to go, so he's still got a chance to set a time, as do Caleb Frederick and Ben Viscal. So we have all 14 cars out on track for the final flying run. There goes Cameron Dass up into 3rd position within 1/10 of a second of Leonardo Lorandi. So our top 3 now are covered by less than 900ths of a second. But I still think that we are going to see some significantly quicker laps. Certainly the cars are capable of faster than this, and we'll see if anyone's able to pull it out the bag over the final few laps. This could get very exciting indeed, so don't go anywhere. The clock is ticking down on the qualifying session for the 2nd race weekend for the Euroformula Open cars at Monza. And here they all are now. Marcus Siebert, he has improved slightly, as you can see on your timing screen at the bottom there. Callum Williams as well, going slightly quicker, but Siebert has lost time in the middle of this lap. A big chunk of time as well. You can see almost 9/10 of a second, so he's not going to post a better time. And what are his tactics going to be at the end of the lap? Is he going to press on for another one? And once again, we've got drivers slowing down as they come out of Ascari, heading towards the Parabolica. Now, this was where things got a little bit tricky yesterday, because we still had some drivers pressing on, trying to improve their lap times and catching bundles of slower cars. We've not had a repeat of the situation we had yesterday, but we have had warnings for track limits for Guillaume Samaya and for Christian Hahn as well. Samaya 10th and Hahn slips to the bottom of the times at the moment. 2 minutes left to go as the cars come by again, and Felipe Drugovich quickest of all in the middle on that lap, but not able to improve on his 2nd place at the moment. And Aldo Fastanti getting in trouble for track limits again. He has had his lap of 1:48.433 disallowed. So track limits becoming an increasing concern. Now the drivers have just begun a lap with pretty much just about enough time to complete it in. They might be able to get onto 1 more lap, but I think anyone who chooses to back off on this lap may compromise their ability to get a final run in, as all over the curbs on the inside of the Della Roja is Christian Hahn, potentially holding up quite a few other cars there. And we have got Callum Williams rejoining the track after cutting across the chicane at the Della Roja. I think it could get quite close as to which of these drivers is able to set a final time. We got off in the background, I think that's Lorandi, and a massive hit through both of the polystyrene boards. He's got grass all over the barge board. He's got a badly damaged front wing, and the driver who was quickest of all but has lost the fastest time to Cameron Dass is in all kinds of trouble. It is not going to be pole position for Leonardo Lorandi. Cameron Dass has just gone quickest with a 1:46.440, but the drivers are all coming around to finish this lap and go on to the next one. But I don't see Leonardo Lorandi improving on his 1:46.620, which currently has him in 2nd position. Which of these drivers is going to improve their time on this lap, and who's got enough time left to complete a 2nd lap? With half a minute left on the clock, I think most of them are going to be able to do one final lap, but we're not going to see them queuing up at the end like we did yesterday. So down they come through the start-finish line. There is Felipe Drugovich. Ben Viscal does it again. He goes quickest with a 1:46.204 right at the end of the track. There's debris at turn 6. That is, of course, up at the exit of Lesmo 1, where we saw where we saw Leonardo Lorandi running wide in the previous lap. Lorandi, in fact, already shuffled down to 5th place. Now that debris on the track and the dirt he's dragged on there could make it difficult for drivers to improve. Felipe Drugovich has fallen down to 7th on the timing screens at the moment. Here's a replay of what happened to Lorandi, and just far too much speed into Lesmo 1. Struggling to get the car back on track, hits one polystyrene board, hits another. One of the boards is left right in the middle of the circuit, and the instruction on the timing screen says stay to the left, and that, I assume, is because that board is still there. We're going to see in a moment when they come out of the corner, and the main piece of the board has been removed, but there's still quite a bit of debris there, as the timing screens indicate. Now, who is on course to improve? Bent Viscal, personal best first sector, and the same for Cameron Dass, Matthias Iorio, Guillaume Samaya, Kalen Frederick, and Dev Gore, but significantly not Felipe Drugovich. Drugovich, though, has got a competitive first sector time and a very fast middle sector time for Felipe Drugovich. It's a 35.076, which is 0.2 of a second quicker than anybody else. And Drugovich has got a fantastic toe as they come towards the Parabolica as well, and you can see the purple sector as well. And Drugovich, though, is having to overtake these cars as he comes down towards the Parabolica. He overtakes Kalen Frederick. He has, however, got caught behind the Carlin. Now, that'll have cost him time in the corner, but he should have a good run out and a decent toe down towards the straight from 2 cars in front of him. Is it going to be enough for Felipe Drugovich? They drive towards the line, and it is a 1:45.700. Felipe Drugovich on pole position ahead of Bent Viscal by half a second at Monza. That is a huge gap on a track that only officially has 11 corners. Callum Williams is 3rd, a great run for the Fortec driver into 3rd place, 1:46.261. Matthias Iorio goes 4th with a 1:46.262, missing 3rd place by just 1,000th of a second. Guillaume Samaya up into 5th with a 1:46.332. Let's run you down on the rest of the times. Christian Hahn's got a 1:46.347 for 6th place. Cameron Dass, having led the times just a few minutes ago, falls to 7th on a 1:46.416. Alex Karkosik is 8th on a 1:46.498. Marcus Siebert 9th, 1:46.552. Leonardo Lorandi, what a disappointment for him. Provisional pole position at the middle of the session, but that disastrous error at Lesmo 1, leaving him down in 10th. Lucas Dunnett is 11th ahead of Kalen Frederick, and the last row on the grid is going to be Dev Gore and Aldo Festanti. Last lap for Christian Hahn is under investigation. Hahn is currently 6th on the grid, so we'll see if he gets to keep his lap time, which was a 1:46.347. And if that lap time ends up being deleted, that could shuffle the order ahead of the start of the grid. But what a superbly timed lap by Felipe Drugovich, and what great work by him, staying cool as they came into the Parabolica the last time they came round. Big clutch of cars in front of him. He had to have a look down the inside. It undoubtedly cost him a bit of time at the end of the lap, but it left him superbly placed to get a double toe from cars as they drove towards the finishing line, and cements him on pole position. That lap of 1:45.700, and here's a replay of it, and you can see Drugovich tucked up behind 2 cars as they came out of the last corner, the checkered flag waving and driving to the line. He has taken his pole position for the 8th time this year, and that puts him ideally placed to clinch the title in this afternoon's race. But he will start alongside his closest championship rival, Bent Viscal, who will be doing everything he can to keep this championship battle in play, at least until we move on to the next round at Jerez in Spain in a few weeks' time. But for now, at least, Drugovich set to start from pole position. A great run by him. Felipe Drugovich on pole then at Monza and on course for the championship. Don't miss the race coming up later on this afternoon from Monza to find out if Drugovich can clinch the title. Join us later then. Until now, from me, Keith Collentine, goodbye.